Alright, in this tutorial I'm going to show you the two ways to digitize, and there's probably a third way, but I'm going to show you the two ways that I know how to do it, which I think are the easiest ways to do it. So ultimately, when we're digitizing, what we're trying to do is trace out something off of typically a raster that is already tied to the Earth, something that's already been geoprocessed and tied spatially to the Earth. So here I've just loaded the base map, the Esri base map for Jonah Field in Wyoming, or we can do any other one. I've got a bookmark for Maverick Stadium in Logan. So for this assignment, I'm going to have you pick whatever stadium or athletic field of your choice, and you're going to digitize it. So stadiums make a good example because there's lots of different things that you can put into different shape files. So we're starting with a base map of whatever that we want to use. The Esri base map is just fine for this exercise, but it could be some other raster that I've tied to the Earth, a drone image, or another paper map that I've stuck to the Earth. And then what I want to do is create shape files that relate to these different areas. So I can have a parking area, I can have a field area, stadium seating, whatever else that you want to do. And I want you to be pretty picky and pretty fine, do some fine work with it. So my default way of digitizing starts with the drawbar. And to get to the drawbar, you're going to have to go to Customize, Toolbars, and Draw. Make sure that Check by Draw. And this appears. And the default shape for drawing, which is just kind of a way of sketching around, is the square or the rectangle. So we want to change that to a polygon or a line or a marker, depending on what we're digitizing. Circles work, though I think you'll find that very few things are real circles. There's also some other issues with circles. I typically don't use circles. I'll use a polygon instead of that. Same thing with the ellipse. It makes about 1 million vertices, so if you have to try to edit it, it can be a bit of a problem. So we're going to stick with the polygon today, and I'm going to pick the obvious here. I'm going to draw a polygon around the field. Single click anchors me to a corner or anywhere along the edge. I'm going to click my way around the corner. So you notice this field is not a perfect square. So I'm going to make my way around the field in this direction. And once I've kind of made vertices on each corner, I'm going to double click to finish. That's pretty messy, but I could go in and I could edit things here, edit my vertices of my drawing by clicking up here. And I can always right click, and you've got to be right on your drawing, and I can add vertices, I can hover over them, I can shift things. I'm going to add a vertex there. I'm going to clean this thing up. I could probably use another one there. Likewise, I can shift things over whatever direction I want. So that's not terrible, but it's not great. But that's the general idea. When I'm done, I'll click back over on this black arrow. I can also right-click on my drawing, go to Properties, change the color. I can make it hollow, I can make it red, whatever I want to do. Now you notice when I created this, it does not show up in my table of contents because I'm really just taking a pen and I'm drawing on this. I'm not making anything permanent, so I can't share this data with anybody or even with a separate project. So there's not a lot of utility with the drawing itself except for on that individual map. And I'll occasionally do that. There's some other nice things about it. When I right click on it and go to Properties, I can get things like the area, change it to acres. So there is some use to it, and we do use it as kind of a quick and fast way of determining distances and areas and things like that. But what I want to do for this project is I want to save this into a shapefile. And if you remember, a shapefile is kind of this singular pile of data. A geodatabase has a whole bunch of shapefiles. Here we're just going to make a single shapefile, but we can do it within a database. So I've got my folder up here. This is just a folder that I work in. I'm going to right click on the folder I want to make my database in, and I could just call it a shapefile, But I'm going to start with a geodatabase here, and do a file geodatabase, and I'm going to call this maverick.gdb and hit enter. It's empty, right, because there's nothing in it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this into that GDB. Okay, so I'm going to right click, actually I'm going to just click on it so it's highlighted. And I could just as easily have more than one drawing, and I would control or shift to select all the ones that I have. I'm going to go to my drawing toolbar, select it again, drawing, convert graphics to features. Okay, and this is going to convert all my polygon graphics. If I have things like lines or markers, I'll have to come in here and select the ones that I want. And I can select all of them, or I can just select the ones that I've individually selected. The coordinate system, it's going to use the same as the data frame. The data frame is set to whatever the base map is at. I don't know what it is, probably UTM. We'll talk about that more when we talk about vector production. And then where it's going to save it at is here. And what I want to do is I'm going to have to identify that GDB. So I'm going to go here to my other, and you notice the GDB does not show up in the folder it's supposed to be in. I have to change this from a shapefile to a file and personal geodatabase feature class. So I'm going to click within my Maverick GDB. I'm going to call this filled, and I'm going to hit save. And then I like to check this button here because it gets rid of that graphic, my drawing, and replaces it with the shapefile that I've made. So I'm going to hit OK. Of course, I want to add that to my map. And now you notice it's in my table of contents. If I go to my catalog and I refresh, you notice there is my field within the GDB. So there we have our GDB, which is ready to, our field, which is ready to go. So again, I could go and I could do something. I could do parking. I can save it individually as a shapefile, or I can plug it into the GDB. If I'm generating lots of data, a GDB is going to be a cleaner way of organizing your data. So that's one way, is using the drawing toolbar. I'm going to close that for now. And the other way is the way I think we mostly learned within GIS I. So we're going to actually just create a file here within the GDB, or within just the other. I can always move something into the GDB. Let me show you how that works. Let's do that first. So if I go new and I go shapefile, so again, it's a right click, new shapefile. I'm just going to call this new shapefile for now, and we'll leave this kind of the default values. Okay, and you can see it here. It's not in my GDB, right? It's in that folder, so I could share that. But if I want it in the GDB, all I have to do is move it up within the GDB. At least it should go in there. Maybe it won't let me. Okay, I guess it won't let you do that. So you're not going to include that in the GDB. There's probably a way to do that, to add that in there. So that's kind of a one-off. I'm just digitizing the field or the parking. I don't necessarily need it in the GDB. I'm going to right-click and get rid of this. And I can just right-click within the GDB also and go new. In this case, we're going to go feature class. Okay, I'm going to give it a name. Let's call it parking. It's going to be a polygon. I have to tell it up front what I'm doing. And this is going to use State Plane Idaho West, which is fine. Just hit next. Use the defaults on all these things. If I'm going to add other field names to the attribute table, I would do it here, and I'm ready to roll. Okay, so here's my parking. I haven't done anything, right? To get anything within the parking, I need to use the editor, start editing. Okay, now this is all highlighted, and you don't really know where it is unless you're on the Create Feature tab. So you need to have the Create Feature tab up here on the right. I'm going to click on parking, and then I get the options below to do a polygon, rectangle, circle, so on and so forth. So I'm going to use a polygon here, and I'm just going to mark my way around this parking lot, and apparently part of the road, whatever works. Come across this way, this way, this way, and I've gotten all kinds of stuff in there. That's fine. Okay, and now it's there. It's there, but it's not there until I go Editor, Save Edits. Once it's in, you're good. Okay, and this has similar tools as the Draw toolbar does. If I want to edit it, I can right-click, Edit Vertices. I can add vertices by right-clicking. I can move vertices and shift things over, and then I'll have to click off of it once I'm done. And I can come over here. If I want to create another feature, I've got to come back over here, create a new polygon, and then I can identify additional parking areas. Okay, so that's the idea. And then when I'm done, stop editing. It'll ask you if you haven't saved, you want to save it. Of course you do, unless you don't, like you've made a big mistake and you don't want it, and that does happen. So once I've got it, I've got my parking layer, I've got my fill layer. I've stuck them within the GDB over here, my Maverick GDB, which then can be shared between projects and between people. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the two ways of digitizing, and you can refer back to this as you're doing your assignment.